The rain hammered against our bedroom window like an angry fist, and I lay there in the dark, listening to my wife pack for her weekend getaway. 3 a.m, and Kara was folding clothes with the precision of a surgeon. That should have been my first clue. "Can't sleep again?" she whispered, not looking up from her suitcase. "Storm's keeping me up," I lied. Truth was, I'd been watching her for the past 20 minutes, noting every careful movement, every deliberate choice. Designer jeans she never wore around me. That red silk blouse I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one she claimed made her look fat. My name's Cole Merrick, and I fix boats for a living. 38 years old, hands permanently stained with engine grease, and married to a woman who works in public relations for the biggest marketing firm in coastal Maine. We live in the house my grandfather built, all creaky floorboards and stubborn doors overlooking Penobscot Bay. Quote 2. Kara said, zipping up a cosmetics bag. Quote 3. I grunted something that might have passed for agreement. Kara's work friend Tina was the type who planned everything except her own life. But something about this whole setup felt wrong, like an engine that sounds smooth but runs rough. "Which spa again?" I asked. "Ocean Breeze Resort, up in Bar Harbor." She didn't hesitate, didn't look away from her packing. Either she was telling the truth, or she'd rehearsed this conversation. I rolled over, pretending to drift off, but kept one eye cracked open. Kara lifted her suitcase, testing its weight, and I heard her sharp intake of breath. That bag was heavy, too heavy for a weekend of massages and cucumber water. After she went downstairs to load her car, I slipped out of bed and checked the bathroom. Her birth control pills were gone from the medicine cabinet. Kara had been taking those pills religiously for 3 years, ever since we decided to wait on kids until my boat repair business got more stable. Why would she need them at a spa? The front door slammed, and I heard her Honda Civic pull out of our gravel driveway. I waited 10 minutes, then went downstairs and checked the kitchen counter where she always left her spare phone charger. It wasn't there. Kara owned one phone, an iPhone with a cracked screen that she constantly complained about but never replaced. So why would she take a charger for a phone that was already fully charged, unless she had a second phone? I made coffee and sat at our kitchen table, staring out at the storm. Lightning illuminated the bay, and I could see the masts of sailboats rocking in the marina where I worked. My grandfather used to say that storms reveal the true character of both ships and people. Strong ones weather the tempest, weak ones break apart. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I drove to Radio Shack and bought a small GPS tracker, the kind worried parents use to monitor teenage drivers. Cost me $60 I couldn't really afford, but I had a feeling it would be worth every penny. Then I called our credit card company and reported Kara's card as potentially compromised. They froze it immediately, pending verification. If I was wrong about my suspicions, I'd look like a paranoid fool. If I was right, well, Kara was about to learn that underestimating a boat mechanic was a serious mistake. I spent the rest of Friday working on a stubborn outboard motor, but my mind kept drifting to that heavy suitcase and the missing birth control pills. Around 5 o'clock, I pulled out my phone and checked the GPS tracker app. Kara's car wasn't at any spa in Bar Harbor. It was parked outside my brother Finn's house, 15 minutes away. "Well, I'll be damned," I muttered, and a cold smile spread across my face. If I'm paranoid, I'm a goddamn psychic. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I sat in my truck outside Finn's suburban development for 20 minutes, watching the tracker app confirm what my gut had been telling me for weeks. My wife's car hadn't moved from his driveway. The rain had stopped, but heavy clouds still hung over the neighborhood like a gray blanket. Finn Harlow lived in one of those cookie-cutter houses that developers slap up in 6 months, all vinyl siding and fake shutters designed to look impressive to people who don't look too close. He'd bought it 3 years ago when his insurance sales business took off, right around the time he married Vera. Vera Halden was nothing like the women Finn usually chased. Where his previous girlfriends had been flashy and high maintenance, Vera was quiet, thoughtful, and had a way of seeing through people's pretenses that made Finn's friends uncomfortable. She worked as a librarian and always seemed to know more than she let on. I pulled out my phone and called her. Quote. 8. Vera's voice sounded surprised. Is everything okay? That depends. Is Finn home? A pause. He said he was going fishing with some friends from work. Why? Because my wife is supposed to be at a spa in Bar Harbor, but her car's been parked in your driveway since last night. The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then Vera said very quietly, I think we need to talk. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Vera's cozy kitchen, watching her make tea with hands that shook just slightly. Her house was everything Finn's wasn't, warm, lived in, filled with books and plants, and the kind of comfortable clutter that comes from actually spending time at home. Quote, 14, she said, setting a mug in front of me. Quote, 15. Quote, 16, Vera nodded. Quote, 17. Quote, 18. Quote, 19. She sipped her tea, studying me over the rim. Quote, 20. I'd been asking myself the same question during the drive over. The old Cole might have stormed over there, made a scene, let emotion drive his decisions. But 3 years of marriage to someone who manipulated people for a living had taught me patience. First, I want proof, real proof, not just suspicions and text messages. Vera set down her mug. What did you have in mind? Finn keeps a spare key under the fake rock by his front steps, right? How did you? He's my brother. I know all his hiding spots. I leaned forward. They think they're being clever, sneaking around behind our backs, but they're comfortable now, careless. That makes them vulnerable. Vera was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, There's a small camera system in his living room, security cameras he installed after that break-in scare last month. I know the password. Can you access it remotely? Yes. And I can set it to record automatically when it detects motion. I felt that cold smile return. Then let's give them some privacy to hang themselves. We spent the next hour planning. Vera would use her key to get into Finn's house and adjust the camera angles while I kept watch. The system would record everything to a cloud server that we could access from anywhere. If Kara and Finn were having an affair, we'd have video evidence. If they were planning something more elaborate, like the divorce strategy I was beginning to suspect, we'd have that too. Quote, 31. I asked as we prepared to leave. Vera looked at me with those sharp, intelligent eyes. Quote, 32. We drove separately to Finn's house. The neighborhood was quiet, most people still at work or picking up kids from school. I parked at the end of the street and watched Vera let herself in through the front door. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Gus. Haven't seen you at the split rail lately. Everything okay? Gus Kowalski ran the local bar where I'd been drinking since I turned 21. He was an ex-cop who'd retired early after taking a bullet in the leg during a domestic dispute call. Now he served beer, collected gossip, and gave advice to anyone who'd listen. I texted back, quote 34. Quote 35. Vera emerged from Finn's house 15 minutes later, giving me a subtle thumbs up before getting into her car. The cameras were set. Now we waited. I drove to the split rail and found Gus behind the bar, polishing glasses with the methodical precision of someone who'd done the same task 10,000 times. The place was nearly empty, just a couple of regulars nursing beers and watching a baseball game on the mounted TV. Quote, 36. Gus said, pouring me a beer without being asked. Quote, 37. Gus set down the glass he'd been polishing. That's a hell of a thing to think. You sure? I told him about the GPS tracker, the birth control pills, the text messages Vera had found. Gus listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. So what's your play? He asked when I finished. Depends on what we find on those cameras. If it's just an affair, maybe we handle it quiet-like. Divorce lawyers and division of assets. And if it's more than that? I took a long pull of my beer. Then they're going to learn that messing with a Merrick has consequences. Gus grinned. I always liked that about your family. You folks don't start fights, but you sure as hell finish them. My phone buzzed with a notification from the camera app. Motion detected in Finn's living room. Quote 44. I muttered, opening the video feed. The image quality was surprisingly good. I could see Finn and Kara sitting on his couch, close together, talking intently. I couldn't make out the words, but their body language was intimate, familiar. This wasn't a new relationship. Then Kara pulled out a tablet and showed Finn something on the screen. He nodded, smiled, and kissed her forehead. Quote 45. Gus observed, looking over my shoulder. Quote 46. We watched for another 10 minutes. Finn got up and retrieved a folder from his desk. Kara opened it and began reading, occasionally pointing at specific sections. Whatever they were discussing, it required documentation. Quote 47. Gus said. Quote 48. Quote 49. The camera feed showed Kara standing up and pacing, gesturing emphatically. Finn was taking notes now, writing down whatever she was saying. My phone rang. Vera. Quote 50. She asked, without preamble. Quote 51. Quote 52. A chill ran down my spine. Quote 53. Quote 54. Vera said slowly. Quote 55. On the screen, Kara was showing Finn photos on her phone. He nodded approvingly, then made more notes. Quote 56, I said. Quote 57. Saturday morning brought clear skies and the kind of crisp October air that makes you believe in fresh starts. I spent the early hours reviewing the camera footage Vera and I had collected, building a timeline of my wife's betrayal. The evidence was damning. Not just the affair, though there was plenty of that, but the careful planning sessions, the documents Finn kept pulling from his desk, the way Kara took notes every time he spoke. They weren't just cheating, they were orchestrating something bigger. Around noon, Vera called with an update. Quote 58, she said. Quote 59. Quote 60. Quote 61. I gripped the phone tighter. Quote 62. Quote 63. Quote 64. Vera's laugh was bitter. Similar strategy. Apparently I'm unstable and jealous. He's got medical records showing I've been taking anxiety medication, claims I've been making threats against his clients. The scope of their betrayal was breathtaking. This wasn't just about ending our marriages. It was about destroying us completely, making sure we looked like the villains while they rode off into the sunset together. Quote 66. Vera continued. Quote 67. The Harvest Festival was the biggest social event of the year in our little town. Everyone would be there. Friends, neighbors, business contacts. If Kara and Finn controlled the narrative, we'd be social pariahs before we even knew what hit us. We need to move first, I said. What did you have in mind? I thought about what Gus had told me the night before. Humiliation's always better than violence, but sometimes you gotta go hands-on. Tonight's the Moretti's anniversary party, right? Finn mentioned it last week. Yes, big gathering at their house. Why? Because that's where we're going to premiere our own little documentary. The plan was simple, but required perfect timing. The Morettis lived in the same development as Finn, and their anniversary parties were legendary. Half the town showed up, including most of Kara's co-workers and Finn's insurance clients. Vera would arrive early and volunteer to help set up the entertainment system. While she was connecting her laptop to their big screen TV, I'd position myself outside Finn's house with a clear view of his living room. Around 8 o'clock, the party would be in full swing. That's when I'd call Finn and tell him I was having car trouble. Could he come pick me up? While he was gone, Vera would start the video presentation. Quote 74, Vera asked. Quote 75. We synchronized our watches like we were planning a heist instead of exposing one. At 7:30, I parked 3 blocks from the Moretti's house and walked through their backyard, staying in the shadows. Through the kitchen window, I could see Vera helping arrange food platters, chatting easily with Mrs. Moretti like she didn't have a care in the world. My phone showed 37 people at the party, based on the cars parked outside. Perfect audience size, big enough to spread gossip, small enough that everyone would see the show. At exactly 8 o'clock, I called Finn. "Cole? What's up, brother?" "My truck broke down on Route 1 just past the marina. Engine won't turn over and I can't get a tow truck until tomorrow. Any chance you could give me a ride home?" "Jesus, that's terrible timing. I'm at Tony Moretti's anniversary thing." "I know and I hate to ask, but Kara's at her spa weekend, and I don't have anyone else to call." A pause. I could practically hear him calculating the angles, wondering if this was some kind of trap. But his ego won out, like I knew it would. "All right, I'll be there in 15 minutes. But you owe me for this." "I'll make it up to you," I said, and meant every word. I watched Finn's BMW pull out of the development, then texted Vera. Quote 82. From my position behind the Moretti's garage, I couldn't see the TV screen, but I could hear the sudden drop in conversation volume as 37 people realized they were watching something more interesting than a slideshow of anniversary photos. The first video was relatively innocent. Finn and Kara on his couch, obviously comfortable with each other, clearly more than friends. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Then came the planning sessions. Kara's voice, crystal clear through the sound system, explaining how she'd been, quote, 83Q, and building a case for an abusive marriage. Finn's voice responding with suggestions about timing and legal strategy. The murmurs turned to gasps. By the time the third video started, the one where they discussed dividing up mine and Vera's assets, I could hear people talking loudly, some arguing, a few women crying. My phone rang. Finn. Quote 84. Quote 85. Quote 86. Quote 87. I'd sent him a simple message. "Smile for the camera, brother." The line went quiet except for the sound of his BMW engine. Then, "You son of a..." "Careful, Finn. Wouldn't want people to think you have anger management issues." I hung up and started walking back to my truck. Phase 1 was complete. My phone buzzed with a text from Vera. "Standing ovation. Kara's boss looks ready to spit nails. Think your wife's about to have a very bad Monday." Finn's BMW roared past me, heading back toward the party at about twice the speed limit. I took my time getting to my truck, then drove slowly through the development. The Moretti's house was lit up like Christmas, with people spilling out onto the front lawn, everyone talking at once. Through the living room window, I could see Finn gesticulating wildly at the TV screen while Tony Moretti stood with his arms crossed, looking like a man who'd just had his anniversary party hijacked. I parked across the street and waited. Finn stormed out of the house 5 minutes later, followed by a crowd of curious onlookers. He was shouting something about quote 92 and a quote 93, but nobody seemed particularly sympathetic. That's when I got out of my truck. "Finn," I called out cheerfully. "There you are. Thanks for trying to help with my truck trouble." He spun around, his face purple with rage. "You set me up." "Did I? Funny. I thought you set yourself up. I just provided the documentation." He started walking toward me, hands clenched into fists. The crowd followed, sensing drama. "You think you're clever?" Finn snarled. "You have no idea what you've stepped into." "Enlighten me." "Kara's got lawyers, Cole. Real lawyers. By the time she's done with you, you'll be lucky to keep that falling down house your grandfather left you." I smiled. "Maybe. But first, she'll have to explain to those lawyers why she's been committing credit card fraud." Finn stopped walking. "What?" "Turns out, when you report suspicious activity on your credit cards, the company takes it very seriously. They've been tracking every purchase Kara's made for the past 2 days, including that nice hotel room she booked for you two in Bar Harbor." The crowd was hanging on every word now, I could see phones out, people recording everything. And here's the funny thing about credit card fraud investigations. They require detailed documentation. Bank records, purchase histories, location data, the kind of stuff that makes it real hard to claim you were somewhere else when you were actually shacked up with someone else's husband. Finn's face went from purple to white. Quote 16. Quote 107. I pulled out my phone and played a video clip. Finn and Kara in his living room, her showing him credit card statements while they planned their weekend getaway. Quote 108. I said again. That's when Finn lost what was left of his composure and took a swing at me. I'd been expecting it. Finn had always been a hothead, and humiliation made him stupid. I stepped aside, grabbed his wrist, and used his own momentum to spin him around and slam him face first against the hood of his BMW. Quote 109. I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Quote 110. I let him go and stepped back. Finn straightened up, his nose trickling, his pride in ruins. Quote 111, he said. Quote 112, I agreed. Quote 113. I pulled a can of spray paint from my truck and wrote Boss, quote 114, across his windshield in large red letters. Quote 115. Sunday morning brought the kind of silence that follows a storm. My phone had been ringing since 6 a.m. Friends, neighbors, even a few strangers who'd seen the videos from the Moretti party circulating on social media. I let them all go to voicemail. Kara, on the other hand, had been busy. I discovered her first move when I tried to buy coffee at the Marina Deli and my debit card was declined. Then my credit card. Then the emergency card I kept in my wallet for genuine emergencies. System says your accounts have been frozen, the cashier explained apologetically. Might want to call your bank. I paid for the coffee with crumpled bills from my truck's console and walked outside to make the call. The customer service representative was polite but firm. Mrs. Merrick had reported suspicious activity and potential identity theft. All accounts were frozen pending investigation. Quote 118. I told the representative. Quote 119. Clever. Kara was using the credit card fraud report I'd filed against her as cover for her own financial attack. While I was busy exposing her affair, she'd been busy cutting off my access to our money. But I'd anticipated this move. 3 months ago, after noticing how controlling Kara had become about our finances, I'd opened a separate account at a different bank. Nothing dramatic. Just a place to deposit the cash payments I sometimes received for boat repairs. Kara didn't know about it, and it wasn't connected to any of our joint accounts. I drove to that bank and withdrew $500, enough to keep me operational while I dealt with Kara's sabotage. My phone rang as I was leaving the bank. Vera. They're back, she said without preamble. Finn and Kara, they showed up an hour ago with some man in an expensive suit. Lawyer? That's my guess. They're in Finn's living room and it looks like a strategy meeting. Can you get close enough to hear anything? I'm trying. But Cole, there's something else. I think they know about the cameras. That was a problem. Our surveillance advantage was blown, which meant they'd be more careful about what they said and did in places we might be watching. Quote 126, I said. Quote 127. The bar was busier than usual for a Sunday afternoon. Word about the Moretti party had spread, and it seemed like half the town wanted to buy me a drink and hear the story firsthand. Gus was in his element, playing bartender therapist to a room full of gossip-hungry locals. Quote 128, he said, sliding a beer across the bar. Quote 129. Quote 130. Quote 131. Quote 132. Vera arrived 20 minutes later, looking frazzled. She'd been crying, but her eyes were sharp with anger. They're planning something big, she said, accepting the beer Gus offered. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught enough. They're not just going for divorce anymore. What do you mean? Criminal charges. The lawyer was talking about harassment, stalking, invasion of privacy. They want to have you arrested." The room suddenly felt smaller. A few of the other patrons had gone quiet, listening to our conversation. On what grounds? The cameras, the GPS tracker, the credit card thing. They're claiming it's all part of a pattern of controlling and abusive behavior. Gus whistled low. That's a serious accusation. It's also complete garbage, I said. Everything I did was legal. The GPS tracker was on my own car insurance policy. The credit cards were joint accounts. And the cameras were in Finn's house with his wife's permission. Doesn't matter if it sounds convincing to a judge, Vera said. And they've got that whole fake documentation about your supposed history of abuse. I took a long drink of beer and thought about my options. Kara and Finn were escalating, trying to turn this from a domestic dispute into a criminal matter. If they succeeded, I wouldn't just lose my wife and my money. I'd lose my freedom. We need to hit them first, I said, and we need to hit them hard. What did you have in mind? Gus asked. They think they're playing chess, moving pieces around the board, planning 3 moves ahead. But they forgot something important. What's that? I'm not playing chess. I'm playing poker. And I've been holding back my best cards. The plan I outlined was riskier than anything we'd tried before, but the stakes had been raised. If Kara and Finn wanted to play dirty, I'd show them what dirty really looked like. You sure about this? Vera asked when I finished explaining. No, but I'm sure about what happens if we don't try. They destroy us, and they get away with it. Gus nodded approvingly. Sometimes you've got to bet everything on one hand. Exactly, and I think our hand is stronger than they realize. That evening, I put the first part of my plan into motion. I called Kara's phone, knowing she wouldn't answer, and left a voicemail that sounded appropriately desperate and defeated. Kara, it's me. Look, I know things got out of hand last night, and I'm sorry. I was angry and I wasn't thinking straight. Can we please just talk? I don't want this to get any uglier than it already has. Call me back. Then I sent a similar text message, making sure to sound like a man who was ready to negotiate a surrender. The response came 2 hours later, a text from Finn's phone. Quote 155. I showed the message to Vera. Quote 156. Quote 157. Quote 158. The storage unit complex was perfect for my purposes. Lots of separate buildings, multiple entrances and exits, and most importantly, terrible cell phone reception. Whatever Kara and Finn were planning to record or broadcast would be difficult to pull off from there. I spent Monday preparing. First, I visited the complex during daylight hours, renting a unit and familiarizing myself with the layout. Then I made several purchases that would have seemed random to anyone who didn't know what I was planning. By evening, I was ready. I arrived at the complex 15 minutes early and parked where I could see the main entrance. Finn's BMW pulled in right on time, followed by Kara's Honda. They'd brought someone with them, a large man in a dark jacket who stayed in a third car. Backup muscle. They really were taking this seriously. I waited until they were all inside the complex, then made my move. The storage unit complex after dark was a maze of shadows and echoing footsteps. I'd chosen Unit 47B deliberately. It was in the back corner of the facility, surrounded by empty units, with only one way in or out. When I arrived, Kara and Finn were already waiting, along with their muscle-bound friend who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. They'd set up folding chairs in the middle of the empty unit, like this was some kind of business negotiation. Cole, Kara said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. You look terrible. I did look terrible, and it was intentional. I'd spent the day making myself appear defeated, wrinkled clothes, unshaven face, the posture of a man who'd given up fighting. Can we just get this over with? I said, playing my role. What do you want? Finn stepped forward, enjoying his moment of perceived victory. We want you to disappear quietly, sign the divorce papers, don't contest anything, and we might not press criminal charges. Criminal charges for what? Stalking, harassment, invasion of privacy, financial abuse, Kara rattled off. We've got documentation, Cole. Lots of it. I'll bet you do. The muscle-bound guy, I'd decided to call him Bruno, shifted uncomfortably. Quote 168. Quote 169, Finn said. Quote 170, Derek, so much for my Bruno nickname. Quote 171. Kara continued, pulling out a folder. Quote 172, quote 173, quote 174. I pretended to consider this, letting them think they had me cornered. Quote 175, quote 176. Finn smirked. Quote 177, quote 178, quote 179. That's when I started laughing. Not the defeated chuckle they might have expected, but genuine deep laughter that echoed off the metal walls of the storage unit. Something funny? Derek asked, his hand moving toward his jacket. Very funny, actually. See, you three have made a fundamental error in your calculations. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small device that looked like a garage door opener. You assumed I came here to negotiate, but I didn't come here to talk. I came here to give you a demonstration. I pressed the button. Suddenly, the storage unit was flooded with light as hidden spotlights illuminated us from every angle. At the same time, speakers I'd concealed around the unit began playing audio, recordings of Kara and Finn's planning sessions, their discussions about framing me, their detailed strategies for destroying my life. What the hell? Finn started to say, but his voice was drowned out by his own recorded words. The key is making it look like a pattern of escalating behavior. If we can get him arrested, everything else becomes easier. Kara spun around, trying to locate the speakers. Turn it off! I don't think so. See, while you two were busy planning my destruction, I was planning a little public education campaign. I pressed another button. The large door of the storage unit began to rise, revealing what lay beyond. About 30 people stood in the parking lot outside. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, even a few reporters from the local newspaper. Vera stood at the front of the crowd, holding a sign that read, "Truth Matters." Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, my voice carrying clearly in the night air. I'd like you to meet my wife Kara and my brother Finn. They've been working very hard to convince everyone that I'm an abusive husband and dangerous stalker. The crowd pressed closer, phones out, recording everything. Unfortunately for them, they've been doing their planning in front of hidden cameras. Would you like to hear what they really think? I didn't wait for an answer. The speakers continued playing the most damning excerpts from their recorded conversations. Kara laughing about her fake documentation. Finn joking about, quote, 191. Who would believe their story? Both of them discussing how they'd split up our assets once I was out of the picture. This is illegal! Kara shouted. You can't record people without their consent. Actually, I can, I replied calmly. Maine is a one-party consent state, which means as long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's perfectly legal. And since these recordings were made in Finn's house with his wife's knowledge and permission, we're completely within the law. Vera stepped forward, addressing the crowd. I authorized every recording. As Finn's wife, I had legal access to our home security system. Derek was looking around nervously, clearly realizing he'd walked into something much bigger than a simple intimidation session. Quote 197. I continued. Quote 198. Kara's face had gone white. You're bluffing. Am I? Derek, you might want to check your phone. I think you'll find that your parole officer is very interested in your participation in tonight's activities. Derek fumbled for his phone, his face showing panic as he realized his cell service was being jammed. Don't worry, I said helpfully. I'm sure the police will be happy to let you make your phone call when they arrive. Police? Finn's voice cracked. Quote 204. As if on cue, red and blue lights appeared at the entrance to the storage complex. The crowd parted as 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot. I recognized one of the officers, Tom Bradley, who'd gone to high school with Gus and occasionally drank at the split rail. Evening, Cole, Officer Bradley said, surveying the scene. Got a call about some kind of disturbance? Just a family discussion that got a little heated, I replied. though you might be interested in some recordings we've collected regarding a conspiracy to file false police reports." Kara made a desperate last play. "Officer, this man has been stalking and harassing me. He's been tracking my movements, freezing my credit cards, invading my privacy." Officer Bradley looked at her with professional skepticism. "Ma'am, are you saying your husband committed crimes against you?" "Yes, I have documentation." "Funny thing about documentation," I interrupted, pulling out my own folder. "I've got some too. Bank records showing that Kara attempted to drain our joint accounts after I reported suspicious activity. GPS records showing that she lied about her whereabouts. And of course, these audio recordings of her admitting that her abuse allegations are fabricated." I handed the folder to Officer Bradley, who began flipping through it with growing interest. "There's also video evidence of her conspiracy with my brother to commit fraud and file false reports, all obtained legally, all properly documented." Kara looked around desperately, realizing that her carefully constructed narrative was collapsing. "This is entrapment." "No, ma'am," Officer Bradley said mildly. "Entrapment is when law enforcement induces someone to commit a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit. This appears to be a case of you getting caught committing crimes you were already planning." The crowd was eating it up. Phones continued recording as Kara's public breakdown continued. Quote 218, she screamed. Quote 219. Quote 220, I said quietly. Quote 221. Officer Bradley closed the folder and looked at Kara and Finn. Quote 220. As the police led them away, Kara turned back to me one last time. Quote 223. I smiled. Quote 224. I raised my voice so the crowd could hear. Quote 225. Vera appeared at my side, grinning. Quote 226. As the police cars pulled away and the crowd began to disperse, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. Gus approached, shaking his head in admiration. Quote 227. Quote 228. I said, watching the taillights disappear into the night. Quote 229. The next morning brought a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I woke up in my grandfather's house, my house now, legally and completely, and made coffee in a kitchen that felt like home again. The local newspaper had run the story on the front page. Quote 230. The article was fair but thorough, laying out the timeline of Kara and Finn's scheme and their spectacular downfall at the storage unit complex. My phone had been ringing all morning with calls from friends, potential clients, and even a few job offers from boatyards up and down the coast. Apparently, word had spread that I was the kind of guy who could handle problems creatively and effectively. Around noon, Vera stopped by with updates on the legal proceedings. Kara made bail, but her lawyer's already talking about a plea deal, she reported, settling into my kitchen table with a cup of coffee. Turns out public relations firms don't like employees who become the subject of fraud investigations. What about Finn? Still in jail. Derek, his muscle-bound friend, turned out to be on parole for assault. Violating parole by participating in an intimidation scheme is a serious problem. I nodded. And the civil suits? My lawyer says we've got excellent cases. Fraud, conspiracy, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Even if they don't have much money left after legal fees, we'll get judgments that follow them for years. Good. Vera studied me over her coffee cup. You don't seem as satisfied as I expected. I'm satisfied. But satisfaction isn't the same thing as happiness. What would make you happy? I thought about it. Seeing them face the consequences of their choices. Really face them, not just legally, but socially. I think you're going to get that chance. She was right. By evening, the story had spread throughout our small town and beyond. Social media had amplified the recordings and videos, turning Kara and Finn into cautionary tales about the dangers of underestimating quiet people. The split rail was packed that night, with people buying me drinks and wanting to hear the story firsthand. Gus was in his element, playing host to what felt like half the town. "You've become a folk hero," he told me during a brief lull in the crowd. "Guy who stood up to the bullies and won. I just wanted my life back." "Well, you got it, plus interest." Around 9 o'clock, the crowd parted as someone unexpected walked through the door. Kara. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup was smeared, and she wore the same clothes she'd been arrested in the night before. The confident, manipulative woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone who looked defeated and desperate. The bar went quiet as she approached me. "Quote 247, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Quote 248, quote 249, quote 250. I looked around at the crowd of faces watching our interaction with fascination. Quote 2521. Kara flinched. Quote 252. Quote 253. I stood up, letting my voice carry to every corner of the bar. Quote 254. Quote 255. Quote 256. She started crying then, but they were the wrong kind of tears. Not genuine remorse, but the manipulative crying she'd always used to get her way. "I lost my job," she said between sobs. "My apartment application was rejected. Everyone in town is treating me like I'm some kind of monster." "You are some kind of monster." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Kara stopped crying and looked at me with something approaching her old defiance. "You destroyed my life." "No, Kara. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure everyone could see what you really are. I could have made this easy for you. A quiet divorce, split everything 50-50, go our separate ways. But that wasn't your plan, was it? Your plan was to frame me as an abuser, take everything I owned, and leave me with nothing but a criminal record and a ruined reputation." She didn't deny it, couldn't deny it, with all the recorded evidence. "So here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to sign whatever divorce papers my lawyer puts in front of you. You're going to accept whatever settlement he offers, and you're going to do it without complaint, because the alternative is spending the next several years in court fighting fraud charges. And if I don't?" I smiled the cold smile that had become my trademark over the past week. "Then you'll discover that what happened at the storage unit was just the opening act. I've got months of recordings, Kara. Hours of you planning, scheming, laughing about how stupid you thought I was. I've been very selective about what I've released so far." Her face went pale. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Gus, would you mind playing that recording from last Tuesday? The one where Kara talks about what she really thinks of her co-workers?" Gus reached for his phone with a grin. "Happy to." "No," Kara said quickly. "Don't." "Then we understand each other." She looked around the bar at all the faces watching her humiliation, and I could see the exact moment when she realized she had no cards left to play. "I'll sign the papers," she said quietly. "Good choice." She turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, Cole, I did love you once." "No, you didn't. You loved what you thought you could take from me. There's a difference." After she left, the bar slowly returned to its normal volume, but I could feel the weight of everyone's attention. I'd become something I'd never wanted to be, the center of attention, the guy with the dramatic story that everyone wanted to hear. But I'd also become something I'd always been, but never fully realized. Someone who wouldn't be pushed around, manipulated, or destroyed by people who thought they were cleverer than me. "So, what now?" Vera asked, appearing at my elbow. "Now we rebuild. You get your divorce, I get mine, and we figure out what comes next. Any ideas?" I looked around the bar at all the friendly faces, thought about the job offers I'd been getting, considered the possibilities that lay ahead. Quote 281, I said. Quote 282. 3 months later, I was running my own boat repair business, with more work than I could handle, and a reputation for being both skilled and trustworthy. Vera had opened a small bookstore and coffee shop that had quickly become the town's new gathering place. Kara had moved to Portland, where she was working as a receptionist and living in a studio apartment. Finn had served 60 days in jail and was now selling insurance in a town 3 hours away, where nobody knew his story yet. The Harvest Festival came and went without the dramatic revelations they'd planned. Instead, it featured a booth where I displayed some of my boat restoration work, and Vera sold books and coffee to people who kept asking if we were dating. We weren't, but we were friends in a way that felt more solid and reliable than any relationship I'd ever had. We'd been through fire together and come out stronger. On the last night of the festival, as I was helping Vera close up her booth, she asked the question I'd been expecting. Quote, 283. I thought about it seriously. Quote, 284. Quote, 285. To quote, 286. Quote, 287, she said. Quote, 288. As we walked back toward our cars, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, but a deep satisfaction with the choices I'd made and the life I was building. Some people call it revenge. I call it justice, Merrick style. And sometimes, justice is exactly what the situation requires.